Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome back to Critical Flick. Today, I'm going to go over my top 10 films of 2022. So 2022 may not have been the strongest year for film, but we still got some really exceptional movies this year. Make sure you leave your top 10 in the comments below. Let's kick it off right away with number 10. My number 10 film of the year is Avatar: The Way of Water. I absolutely loved seeing this film in IMAX 3D. It is pure spectacle. It is the reason why people go to movies, why you get to see these huge, fantastic scenes take place on the big screen in front of you. I think it improves on the first film in almost every way possible. It still has a slightly weak story like the first film, but I think the visuals are incredible. I think the messaging is powerful. And the visual effects are second to none. Cameron knocks it out of the park. I can't wait to see what we get next. Number 9 is The Northmen. I think that Robert Eggers puts out another fantastic film, very different from his past few films, but I think the overall visuals of this movie are fantastic. The production design is excellent, and I think the visceral and animalistic performance by Alexander Skarsgård is one of the best of the year. I feel like this movie really got buried because it came out earlier in the year, and maybe it wasn't what people expected from this director, but I do think if you go back to it, it is a great watch. There's a lot of layers to it and a lot of intensity. Number 8 is The Banshees of Inisherin. This movie gives great performances from everyone involved. Colin Farrell gives one of his best performances of his career. It's a movie that maybe moves a little bit slowly, but you really, if you sit and you enjoy it and you soak in the overall immersion of being on this tiny Irish island, experiencing these events with this big civil war happening in the background, I think there's a lot to take away from it. It feels like a movie that's perfectly suited for Martin McDonagh to create, whether it be In Bruges or Three Billboards. This is another great film to his catalog. Number 7 is Bones and All, and this movie is probably the biggest surprise of the year for me. When I saw the trailers, I saw everything about it, I thought it was going to just be this weird throwaway movie, but it ended up being one of the best coming of age and romance films that I've seen in a while. It's such a creative take on this kind of genre, and it blends the idea of horror and romance in a way that I haven't seen in a really long time. You get some great performances from both the leads and the supporting characters. It's definitely one to check out if you haven't had it on your radar. If you're a little squeamish, I wouldn't recommend it. It is pretty graphic, a lot more graphic than I thought it would be. Number 6 is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio on Netflix. This, for me, is the best animated film of the year, and one of the best animated films that we've got in the past couple years. I love the stop-motion animation style. The level of detail and craftsmanship that goes into this film is really unmatched in the industry, in my opinion. And I love Del Toro's dark take on Pinocchio. It is inherently a pretty dark story, but getting to see it play out on screen in only the way that he can provide it, the creative style that he brings to the table, just a joy to watch. And it even takes some stabs at social and religious commentary, something I wasn't expecting from a Pinocchio film, so I love that it integrates those things that feel timely even today. My number 5 is The Fablemans. This movie really feels like a warm blanket. It feels like Steven Spielberg's love letter to cinema, why he loves cinema. He puts it bare on the screen for everyone to enjoy. I think the cinematography is excellent. Michelle Williams gives a phenomenal performance. Everyone gives a really good performance this one, to be honest. But I do think the technical and filmmaking aspects of this movie, integrated with the story, make it a really just enjoyable film to watch. It may not blow people away, but I think it is one of the best films that Spielberg has put out in recent years, and you can tell that he put his love into this one. Number 4 is All Quiet on the Western Front. This is another one that surprised me. There's no marketing. No one really talked about this movie. Still, people don't really talk about it unless you're talking about best foreign language film, but it is probably the best war movie that I've seen in quite a long time. I think it really captures the idea of the horror of war. You're thrown into the story seeing a young man with his dreams ahead of him, thinking he's going to be the savior of his nation, realizing that war is a horrible, dirty business. You think that you're going there to be a hero, but maybe you are the villain. Maybe the world is collapsing around you, and you see the light drained from his eyes. You see his dreams destroyed in front of him with every waking moment, with every continual movement in this violent, brutal world. The cinematography is excellent. I think the score is excellent. The acting is excellent. Everything comes together to make one of the best films of the year. And my number 3 film of the year is Elvis. Baz Luhrmann puts his signature style on this one. It made me love Elvis. I'm someone who grew up kind of listening to his music. To be honest, my biggest exposure is probably the Lilo and Stitch soundtrack, but this one showed me the real story of Elvis, who he was as a person, and it made his music that much more interesting to me. Austin Butler gave a phenomenal performance, easily one of the best of the year, and I would fully understand if he wins Best Actor for this one. Kinetic energy of this movie and just the overall intensity keeps it moving. It is a rather long film, but I never felt bored. I felt fully invested, and I think it is something that everyone can enjoy, whether you're an Elvis fan or not. And I do think buried beneath all the spectacle of this movie, it has some really strong messages about flying too close to the sun, being too famous too fast and experiencing that. I think people forget that Elvis was kind of the first celebrity in the era of television, someone who really popped off like no one ever did before and maybe no one has since. So my number 2 movie of the year is The Whale with Brendan Fraser, directed by Darren Aronofsky. And this movie touched me in a way that no other film has this year and probably hasn't in the past couple years. This movie is phenomenal. I think the acting is second to none. I think that Fraser should win Best Actor. I do hear some criticism saying like it's fat phobic, but I feel like if you watch the movie and you actually understand the making of the film, the creators behind it, the writers, everything that goes into it, I don't think you would feel that way. As someone who is overweight, someone who is obese, someone who has lost and gained 60 pounds multiple times, such as myself, I felt understood by this movie. I understood how Charlie could bury his feelings with food. When he feels like he's at his lowest points, he just gorges himself. And people have said, oh, it feels like you're, I don't know, fetishizing it or making it kind of like a horror story. Like this is just this gross man who's just, disgusting. It's not. It really is a story about human spirit and overcoming your problems. Charlie is an empathetic character. He's a constant light in the film, and you're rooting for him even though he's kind of hurting himself. He's fighting against himself, even with the people around him trying to help him, but hurting him at the same way. It's a really powerful film. It may not be for everyone, but for me, it is one of the best films of the year and one of the best films in a long time. My number 1 film, like I think a lot of people this year, is Top Gun Maverick. It is pure cinema. It is a movie that you go into and you experience it in a way that you can't experience other films. The cinematography, the shots from the cockpit, the power of the engines, it's everything that people love in entertainment. And this is coming from someone who doesn't like the first Top Gun. I know that's kind of an unpopular opinion. I don't really like that movie. I think it's cheesy. I don't really enjoy it, but this one hits on all cylinders. The whole movie, it just keeps you going. It keeps you invested. And it is just such a joy to watch. Tom Cruise is excellent. Miles Teller is excellent. I think the story is better than the first one. While it's still a little simplistic, I think the emotions hit harder. And you're so invested by the end of this film. And when you are in that cockpit and you're feeling that engine, I saw this movie in IMAX. There's really nothing else like it in theaters. That was my top 10 films of 2022. Make sure to leave your list below. I always love hearing other people's opinions when it comes to these lists, because you can have someone who has a completely different... I've seen people that have some of my top 10 movies in the top worst movies of the year. And I think that's just so interesting. I'm never offended by anyone's opinions. So make sure to leave those comments below and let me know what your top 10 are. So again, thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and see you guys next time.